You're listening to DraftKings Network.
Roy, you know that moment when you're out watching puck and the server comes over and asks the table, "What can I get you guys?" And everyone freezes up? You know what you should do?
What should I do, Mike?
You've got to have some confidence.
Ooh.
Or as Jägermeister calls it, shotfidence.
I love it.
If everyone's struggling, take control. Just order for the whole table a round of ice-cold Jägermeister shots. Damn, that's cold. Because apparently, we've all been drinking Jägermeister wrong.
Well, how should we be drinking it?
We should be drinking it ice-cold. At 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Roy, like Jägermeister, what else is infinitely better ice cold?
The sport of hockey, Mike.
It's in the name. It's ice hockey.
Ice hockey.
Yes, regular hockey, not as great.
Not floor hockey.
Ice hockey, real good.
Damn right.
Wherever you are, if you're hanging with friends or at the bar, call the shots. Cheers with ice-cold shots of Jägermeister. Damn, that's cold.
And remember to check Jägermeister out at DraftKingsXJägermeister.com.
Drink responsibly. Jägermeister liqueur, 35% alcohol by volume. Imported by Mass Jägermeister, U.S., White Plains, New York.
Shotfidence.
Yeah, sure thing.
Hey, you sold that car yet?
Yeah, sold it to Carvana.
Oh, I thought you were selling to that guy.
The guy who wanted to pay me in foreign currency, no interest, over 36 months? Yeah, no. Carvana gave me an offer in minutes, picked it up, and paid me on the spot. It was so convenient.
Just like that.
Yeah?
No hassle.
None.
That is super convenient.
Sell your car to Carvana and swap hassle for convenience. Pickup fees may apply.
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz podcast.
This episode of the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugotz is presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours.
I stumbled around a little bit in talking about performance enhancers and that Bills story, but I really did want to explore what I would have to present the public with, a public that in sports has become more informed and more skeptical, I would guess, than any sports fans before it, because of how often your heroes have used the pharmacy to get advantages, and because of how unsurprised we are now that competitive people would be super competitive about competition and look for any advantage. The Bills, who came very close to winning the championship last year, had a team the last 3 or 4 years that if a few bounces go a different way, they could be a championship team, or if the Chiefs don't exist, they might be a championship team. They signed 2 free agents because they need help, because last offseason, Chris Cody was right. The Jets were a betting favorite, according to DraftKings, over the Bills when last season began. And it's because of Aaron Rodgers, and it was because of the Bills had lost some people. So in free agency, they grabbed 2 players, and then they learn one of them, who they would not have signed for a year if they had known this, is going to be out for 6 games. The other one, they do know that he's going to be out for 6 games, but they signed him to a 3-year deal anyway. And my question to the group is, unless that's Josh Allen, do any of you care? Like, can I make it any other Bill from the last 10 years and none of you actually care about whether someone is performance enhancing or not performance enhancing? But if I make it Josh Allen, then you'll be like, because it's not the crime, it's the fame?
Chris has a good one that people would notice.
DeMar Hamlin?
I think everybody would understand.
That's how it happened.
Do you understand my larger point? And what do you deal?
I do. Dan, I don't feel like I don't know enough about the kinds of PEDs that these players are using, but it's sort of my understanding that when you stop using them, like, they stop doing anything for you, right?
I would assume, did it stick to Von Miller? Because he got pinched for it several years ago. Did that stigma stick around?
I'm just saying you've got to be super famous, and it has nothing to do with the actual cheating.
Von Miller is way more famous than Larry Ogunjobi.
Never stuck with Brian Cushing.
No,
that's just not
true. Yes, people would certainly care well more if it was a starting quarterback, especially one with the physical gifts of
I think it also depends
Josh Allen.
what it is though, and how long they're using it and that sort of stuff. And I don't know if I know enough about it to really make a judgment call.
Generally, people don't care about NFL PED suspensions. I mean, they care for like what it does to betting lines and fantasy football, and I guess the timing of when these things happen also matter.
I feel like if you're a star, though, like if Jamar Chase got caught, that would be a news story.
It would, but for the weeks that it doesn't taint his legacy in ways that it does in baseball.
It's just the sport, right? Like in football, no one really seems to care about anything football players do in any aspect of anything.
I'm with you. I think there's just a general understanding. Yeah, that sport's crazier than most. Like I'm so not surprised that Larry Ogunjobi, who has been in the league forever, has played with so many teams, has found a way to stick through this very difficult position in an alpha male sport by turning to something. It's just not surprising. In fact, my base assumption is that all these guys have to do something, especially the ones that have stayed in the league for so long, to either recoup from injury or try to avoid it.
I'm curious because, like, we talked about this last week, like, in the NBA, and basically, like, people would care if it's LeBron. If it's not LeBron, people largely don't really care what's going on in the NBA anymore. In baseball, they cared a lot at the beginning, and now you also kind of forget. The only reason you know is because the length of the suspension is so long that it's so obvious, like, 81 games, like you miss half a season. So, like, but otherwise you kind of forget, this person got suspended like 3 seasons ago. I don't even remember that. Football, you never really care because, like, people are out so frequently in the NFL anyways with injury that you don't really know why someone's not playing. It's like, PED's like, and they're back next year. And like Pro Bowler, like, can we get them now for a cheaper price? Like, okay, like, yeah, let's sign up for that. I'm actually curious how the NHL views this, since this is why we started today with Ekblad. Like, do the NHL fans care about PEDs?
The fan bases do. It's been interesting to see, but I'm also on that algo, so I'm also getting fed more stuff. So I'm not exactly sure if my experience with it is outsized. But the more distance that I get from the Mitchell report and people speaking in front of Congress, like those guys in the late 90s, I know that they soared with impunity and made a lot of money because of the drugs that they were turning to, but man, that's looking a little unfair in retrospect.
Rafael Palmeiro.
And it's so good now.
Ridiculous.
It is high comedy now, looking back on it. A congressional hearing where Sammy Sosa's pretending he suddenly doesn't understand or speak English.
That was a waste of money, if we're going to be honest. Like, crazy waste of money. Like, that was taxpayer money. Was crazy. Roy, I think you're a hockey purist just because I think you're the only person that, like, likes hockey for a long time. How do you feel about the whole steroid stuff in hockey? Like, do you care about this?
No, I mean, it hasn't really happened that often. I mean, the last time somebody got pinched for PED abuse was Nate Smith, like 6 or 7 years ago when he was in Vegas.
So all Panthers.
Oh, it was also a Florida Panther.
Really?
I mean, it's awfully convenient for someone that, roots for the Panthers to say, I don't really think about it. Like, it's bothered me, and I'm deducing that it certainly helped him because he's looked like a different player this season.
Well, the thing is, he's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season, so I don't know how that's going to go into his negotiations with Bill Zito.
Well, also, I'm like, is there, Roy, have they said, like, what kind of steroids or PEDs he was using? Because there's a difference, right? Like, there's a difference between some of the things that athletes were getting pinched for in the 90s versus things like a stimulant or something that's on the list of performance-enhancing drugs that you're not supposed to use that could help you work out long. Like I
genuinely need to be leaked out.
I don't know enough about it to really like make the judgment call, but I know that there are some slight differences. Like what Yannick Sinner got in trouble for that has been like a long fought over battle in tennis over the last 2 years could be a completely different thing than what like Barry Bonds was doing.
Well, I do know a little something about this. I do love the expression pinched. Someone was pinched for. Like that feels like something that someone would say more in the 1920s, right?
That's why Roy the Shield watcher was the one who
pinched.
Who started with the pinched.
Yeah, can you guys get me the origins of pinched, please? But the thing that I do know something about is that South Florida has been a bit of a rejuvenation mecca for many of these athletes, and the science is at the highest end of wherever it is that you'd find people willing to cross a line over money. All of these economies that our bodies are using the height of medicine to heal, to be professionally better, but also to skirt all of the people monitoring whether or not they're cheating. So when these guys come out and say, I made a mistake on a supplement, which is what they all do, but you don't know whether it's a supplement or an injection, trust me when I tell you that all of the science being used here is to push the boundaries beyond where they can get caught, not beyond where the boundaries are. They are trying to avoid the police as much as they are trying to heal their bodies, because of course competitive people who are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on trainers and medicine of their own money to repair their bodies and their economies are going to go to all lengths to outcompete the next guy doing it.
I think the crazy thing about where we are in like performance enhancing drugs, like unfortunately, is now when you see someone like gets pinched for performance enhancing drugs, I think the first thought most people have is like, oh, so you're just dumb. Like, because like everyone's doing it and they know exactly how to get around it, and like, oh, we have someone that's dumb and couldn't figure out how to get around it, or is just like reckless and didn't do what they needed to do to properly pass the test, which like is a crazy thing. But like as sports fans, you just kind of have accepted that everyone's just trying to get around the system and they've figured out how to beat it. And then when someone does, you're like, oh, why can't you figure out how to get around it?
I think that is where we are, though, on how superhuman and unnatural some of the things are right now at the height of science. Of course, people would be ultra competitive on that and would find a place where we've arrived there, Billy, just like you are, where we're all looking at it and saying, yeah, they're all probably doing something a lot, like something that's very close to the line on how it is that they stay maximum competitive.
I think the reasons why this one resonated so much is, as Roy mentioned, you don't see this often in this sport. And his explanation was, I took something I shouldn't have, that I wasn't aware, that I wasn't completely aware I shouldn't have, to get back. Well, this is a player that was so impacted by all of his injuries. I'm sure many people in our audience that kind of tangentially follow the sport know that generally when we invoke Aaron Ekblad's name, months ago, it was about frustration. This guy is making bad mistakes. He can't keep up. He's a shell of himself. And this year, all that went away. And he was starting to be healthy. And you couldn't ignore the correlation between, okay, maybe it's just fitness, but now you have this element thrown into it, and you start wondering, well, I guess my eyes weren't lying to me. He was a different player, and this is why.
Struggling to find the origin, but it is British originally. British slang.
Okay,
Pinched.
so thank you. We're further along than we were moments ago.
I think the other thing I think of when I think of a lot of these athletes who have been using PEDs for a long time is that like a lot of these things we know are really bad for you in the long term, and so it sort of like makes me sad because there's so much pressure to obviously perform and to like maximize your prime as an athlete and your earning potential, that like you understand like what they're putting their bodies through, and that it is something that like most of our bodies wouldn't be able to withstand. And so it's very like, it's sad sometimes to think about too much, because it's like something that as fans like we're just being entertained. We're like, stop making that stupid decision, you dumb hockey player. But like internally and physically, like he's probably going through like an insane amount of pressure.
There was a wedding of one of the Florida Panthers when they had lost to the Vegas Golden Knights in the Stanley Cup final. And people were in neck braces, people who were on crutches, like everyone looked like they were in a military hospital.
Yep. Can you guys find me that? Because Roy is sitting here smiling at the idea of that's what it costs to win the championship. That brought
in that sport? Didn't Ekblad play with a broken bone in his leg?
Yes.
I think he played with a broken bone in his leg. And I saw those photos, and I was happy with the season. Panthers were the last seed to get into the playoffs, lucky to get into the playoffs. They went on this majestic run, and I saw those photos. I'm like, man, is that worth it? Like there were like a half dozen people that shouldn't have been out. They should have been on bed rest.
No, but you, I think you constantly in your analysis of sports around here, more than anybody else, you're the one who says, "Oh, he was dinged up." Or
they do that lower body injury famously.
I know you got to play through that, whatever that is.
Hockey fans love to tell you how tough their favorite players are. Yeah. It's not just Mike.
Absolutely. I mean, Matthew Tkachuk was in a serious car accident on the ice, a broken collarbone. He left the game. He came back and had a game-winning assist in that game before he couldn't get out of bed the following day.
Do you understand if you ask them to care that much, then you can't be that upset when they care so much that they also use the healing agents that are on the line?
I think you can be upset because no one else gets caught.
Yeah. Like, you're not upset that you're cheating. You're upset that they're dumb.
I think that's where we are with some of this stuff.
Also, like, outside of Florida, I don't think anyone cares about Aaron Ekblad.
No, but I'm just
opposing fans do.
Look, but I'm bringing it up you care about the Bills. Like, you care about the Bills, and you don't care about that controversy over there.
That's just football.
I don't know how many people are getting up for Larry Ogunjobi. No, it's just rare that you see two of them announced simultaneously. Like, wait, was this the offseason plan?
This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. All so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.
Don Le Batard.
Florida claws back from down 2-0 because they were getting their asses handed to them by Toronto to then get lit afire underneath them by their head coach, Paul Maurice, who did the thing. Remember how the run was sparked last year?
Stugotz.
He called them a bunch of P's and B's. He did the thing again. Called them a bunch of P's and B's, and then, boom, 5 unanswered. You win the division.
This is the Don Le Batard Show with the Stugotz.
Let me bring up somebody that people do care about here, because I wanted to ask you guys, I don't know what's the truest thing now because of the amount of lying that there is around business this time of year. It's Shedeur Sanders that I want to talk about, but just to close the loop on that previous topic, what do you think will happen if I just go over a world of the world's most competitive people and just drop money down there and make them fight over it? Like, they're going to use science. The amount of money and pressure that we're talking about in these economies that feed families is what funds sports. The desperation of all that. It's what we're watching. Shedeur Sanders goes into the draft, and I don't know what's real or true about he's dropping. That his arrogance has put off executives, and that Shedeur Sanders may, and I saw this recently, fall right out of the first round, which kind of floored me because there aren't very many good quarterbacks in this draft, and the bottom end of this first round is not very strong. What's the recent on Shedeur Sanders? Because I want to talk about confidence at that position, and I want to talk about belief, and I'm curious what's happening that might be considered real around Shedeur Sanders.
Well, I know that that Louis Riddick came out and said what's happening to Shedeur Sanders is unfair because people are slandering his name, and a lot of this is people reading tea leaves, hearing whispers, and talk show hosts running with this thing. But quite honestly, I think what's happening mostly is he has a very weak arm. If he were in the league right now and he were a starter in the league, I've read people surmise that he'd be number 30, 31, possibly 32 in terms of arm strength. And maybe he shouldn't have been looked at. If this were maybe next year's quarterback class, he wouldn't be discussed as a first-round draft pick. Maybe he's being discussed as a first-round draft pick because it's a hugely important position. And this year, outside of Cam Ward, there really isn't consensus on who can be a franchise-changing guy.
Isn't this what you want if you're Sanders? Okay, I'm going to a better team now. No. Like, he's projected to go to the Steelers, I'm seeing here at 21. I'm just saying, like, I get it. You want to be a top overall pick, but the lower you get in the first round, you get better teams.
I think he can spin it into this is a better spot for me. But no, it's definitely not what he wanted, because I think before his bowl game, he came out with cleats that had the Giants logo and the Raiders logo. While the draft order was not yet locked in, these were teams that were talked about as potentially having the number one pick. It's not going the way that he wanted.
If you're a team that wants him, this is what you want to happen, because you want him to fall to you, because he just kind of starts, plummeting. But no, Shedeur is not hoping that he falls out of the first round by any means, just because he might end up on a better team.
I'm not saying
he's costing himself money.
I'm just saying, does he say, okay, maybe this is not what I wanted, but this could work out for me?
Well, also the better teams all have quarterbacks, right? right? So like he wants to go to a situation where he's going to play, or like there's a playing plan in place for him, not just he doesn't want to be a backup on the Chiefs.
I think in December he certainly had better odds than Cam Ward to be the number 1 pick. He was like a slight dog to not be the number 1 overall draft pick. And in the months that have followed, as he's going through this process, if people inspect his character a little bit more and also his actual skill set, it's not going the way that he wants.
Well, those are two different things, and I want to talk about both of them, because when you throw out the metric, because it's not something that we've had measured, but weak arm. Give me all the guys in the NFL that you think have weak arms who are starters, where you're just watching. Like when I think weak arm, you got to be Drew Brees, and you have to be that kind of accurate. Tua? Or you were just coughing?
I'm okay, thank you.
Okay.
Allergies.
There aren't many that you would look at and say that arm's not strong enough. But when it comes to Shedeur, that is something that to the eye, I think people can look and see those outs have a little parabola in them. They're not quite Justin Herbert throws. But I want to talk about the other thing, which is what was coming out of the scouting combine was attitude stuff, was arrogance stuff, was how he was interviewing.
Is that shocking? Like, you can understand, like, well, we all understand where it comes from, right? His dad is his biggest supporter, and he's done nothing. I think, didn't he say, hey, let's go to this rap concert and support my son? He's always been in a bubble where he's playing the most important position for his dad, and everybody has to ingratiate themselves to the head coach. It's a byproduct of these environments that he's been put in.
I'm not saying that it's surprising. I'm saying that I would think that if I put all of these factors in play, that usually in hypothetical athlete X, there are things we would like. Do you want your quarterback to have belief? Do you want your quarterback to come from an upbringing of a professional athlete who knows what it takes to have the correct belief? Do you, when parenting, is there something that you can give your child that's better than the support that creates belief? Like, is there anything outside of love? What can a parent give to a child? Maybe we say discipline or something else, but what's stronger than giving your child belief? Deion Sanders is one of the most confident people in the history of sports and one of the most interesting athletes ever. That he would give his son a quarterback belief at the position. Why would that be off-putting?
It's fine, but like if you're a team looking for a quarterback, you want the parents who have given your quarterback a good arm. And we can find the belief down the road.
It's a tough data point. Famously in the movie Draft Day, Kevin Costner makes a decision because like no one showed up to the quarterback's birthday, and he's like, "Well, that's a big red flag." I mean, it could be because all the people that had a problem with Shedeur ended up leaving the program. Trust me, you can Google it. There have been plenty of people that have their opinions about how Deion Sanders runs his program that didn't like it and had things to say. But I could say from watching a lot of Colorado football last year, the teammates love Shedeur. So how is this actually rubbing his team? I understand where there's that concern, but in terms of rah-rah leader guy, Shedeur seems very supportive of his teammates, and the optics are his teammates love him.
When you talk weak arm, we can say that, but it didn't feel like anybody was saying that when through the consensus of the last half of the season, he was going to be a top 5 pick.
It's also not a popular thing to say as he's literally winning overtime. We're sending games into overtime with 40-yard passes that do tend to hang in the air. But if you think about a lot of Travis Hunter's highlights, it's a lot of individual athleticism. It was hard to know what the real data there was because all season long, it almost felt like the offensive identity for Colorado was, we're getting one of these guys a Heisman. We're just going to spam the math.
You guys are parents. Belief. Giving your child belief. The support that makes a child have confidence or believe. Like, where would it rank on how high on the list of things that you want to do as a parent?
I think right behind making sure your son's the executive producer of his friend's sports show.
I mean,
there could be irrational belief. We know that. That's a genetic trait, right? That Shedeur's confidence in himself has to come from his father some way, right? Biologically speaking, but he's also plenty talented. I will support my daughter. I will go to all of her events. I've also watched her play soccer. I'm not going to fill her head with, these dreams of her playing for the U.S. women's national team. If anything, I'm going to take her out of soccer and realize this is not your calling, babe.
I want my children to believe in myself, but like that has nothing to do with what the NFL needs at the position. Like believing in yourself is great. You could also be not that great. I'm not saying that that's Shedeur, but like what they care about is talent and arm strength and all of that. Like they're not handing out Nobel prizes. They're trying to win Lombardi trophies. Like who cares if you believe in yourself?
But Billy,
everyone's full of every college is full of walk-ons that believed in themselves that just weren't good enough.
The reason I mean, it's not who cares. It's being a knock. You're saying weak arm strength. The reports were he bombed the interviews and his stock dropped from the scouting combines because the executives thought he was arrogant. So it's not that
relative to his talent.
Because there's a balance to it. Confidence becomes arrogance when you don't have any. Like you have to be a little humble too. You can be confident. But you don't want to be a dick.
If you're good enough, you can look past it. Like this weekend, I don't know why, but this weekend I was watching highlights of Baker Mayfield when he was at Oklahoma. And he was
on that algo too.
Yeah, and he was
when they
going
refused
back,
to shake his hand.
They didn't shake his hand, and he was talking the entire game. He grabbed his crotch. He looked at the other team. He was screaming at them the entire game. I think it was against Kansas, and the broadcasters were like, "Oh, the NFL scouts, they're not going to like that one. They're not going to like that in their locker room. They're going to say that's probably going to impact him. Number one pick." So if you're good enough, you can look past all of the arrogance. It's just a matter of if the measurables aren't there and they don't think that his arm is strong enough, they're not going to put up with it as much.
Teams love that confidence. Cam Ward has plenty of that confidence. It's when do you turn it off? When do you know that, I should be interviewing right now, not giving off cocky, arrogant quarterback? And there's something clearly happening in these interviews where his personality is rubbing those executives the wrong way. Cam has, if you ever see Cam, they work out together. Cam comes off as the more confident guy whenever they're paired with one another. But through the evaluation process, he's also a good team guy in a more conventional sense.
I mean, it's not good for like a sports radio show, but it's all stupid, right? Like it doesn't matter how confident you are or how good your ability is. Like the NFL draft ends up being a crapshoot anyways. We were talking about it with Laramie Tunsil last week and how people, oh my God, we don't know what to do here. And then he ends up falling and then he ends up being like a multi-time Pro Bowler. So like, Shedeur can fall, and he's either going to work out or he's not going to work out. And he's going to work out whether he's the number 7 pick or he's not going to work out if he's a 7 pick or work out as a 28th pick or not work out as a 28th pick. Like, it doesn't really matter all that much.
Yeah, we could do that about all of sports.
Roy, you know that moment when you're out watching puck and the server comes over and asks the table, "What can I get you guys?" And everyone freezes up? You know what you should do?
What should I do, Mike?
You've got to have some confidence.
Ooh.
Or as Jägermeister calls it, shotfidence.
I love it.
If everyone's struggling, take control. Just order for the whole table a round of ice-cold Jägermeister shots. Damn, that's cold. Because apparently, we've all been drinking Jägermeister wrong.
Well, how should we be drinking it?
We should be drinking it ice-cold. At 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Roy, like Jägermeister, what else is infinitely better ice-cold?
The sport of hockey, Mike.
It's in the name. It's ice hockey.
Ice hockey.
Yes, regular hockey, not as great.
Not floor hockey.
Ice hockey, real good.
Damn right.
Wherever you are, if you're hanging with friends or at the bar, call the shots. Cheers with ice-cold shots of Jägermeister. Damn, that's cold.
And remember to check Jägermeister out at DraftKingsXJägermeister.com.
Drink responsibly. Jägermeister liqueur, 35% alcohol by volume. Imported by Mass Jägermeister, U.S., White Plains, New York.
Shotfidence.
When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Mattel, Heinz, or Skims, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the business behind the business, making and selling, and for shoppers, buying. Simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. No one does selling better than Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret secret with Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Heinz uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Batard, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Batard to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Batard.
Don Le Batard.
Well, Charlie as far as I know, so just Charlie's title in my
Are you going to say anything?
Stugotz.
How familiar were you at the time with Chewbacca? Like how your upbringing, how had how much Chewbacca in it.
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz.
Can you get me Laramie Tunsil, please, and what he's been traded for in the entirety of his career? All of it. What Laramie Tunsil has brought back. And I wanted to talk because Micah Parsons, when Laramie Tunsil was traded to the Commanders, put up a tweet saying, WTF, because the Commanders keep getting stronger. And what's happening in that division is that the Commanders and the Eagles have gotten so far out ahead of the Giants and Cowboys that the only time we talk about the Cowboys is when DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons are going back and forth with each other. You guys do realize that Micah Parsons right now in Dallas, through play and through talk, is the biggest star they have. Dak Prescott's famous.
Man, the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, it's also always talked about on...
But not the personality to be controversial in the modern age and to keep getting into fights that keep his name out there. Micah Parsons is developing a temperament as a star, whether you want to say Dak Prescott or C.D. Lamb are bigger stars. I'm telling you, this player at this position, through excellence, is getting a notoriety and fame for his mouth, and he cares about selling it because... The back and forth with DeMarcus Lawrence is leaving the Cowboys, and he is saying, while going to Seattle, I knew I was never going to win a Super Bowl in Dallas. Micah Parsons comes back at him saying that's some clown shit, and Lawrence comes back at him, if you spent more time winning instead of tweeting, thinking about winning more than tweeting, whatever it is that he said. Just the back and forth is, this is what the Cowboys are now. And Micah Parsons, people have talked about this with the Cowboys. Jerry Jones is totally fine with the spectacle and the noise and when he brings attention to a product that isn't that good in the name of marketing. But the fans don't like it so much when it's their star player, Micah Parsons, and he's going back and forth with everybody because the beef makes Micah Parsons more famous, and he's not afraid of the noise, nor is he afraid of the smoke. Like he'll go after anybody.
He is, and it's grating. It's grating when they're not winning. And I know plenty of Cowboys fans that are rubbed the wrong way by how Micah Parsons does, Twitch streams and podcasts. And when they're not getting the results that they want on the field, they start turning on everybody over there. But I do think Dak Prescott's a bigger star than him, just because I observed on mute the A block of First Take for a year and a half.
Okay, and that's more symbolic than it is interesting, right? Because in terms of personality or whatever it is,
no doubt.
But I mean, just
Micah Parsons wants to be thought of as one of those personalities, where Dak Prescott almost laments his celebrity.
You're
publicly.
not allowed to be quite that at quarterback. We were talking before about Shedeur Sanders and whether or not your quarterback can be a dick, for lack of a better word, and I just don't think it matters. You'd like your teammates to like you, and it looks like Baker Mayfield's teammates.
He finally got to a spot where his teammates love him, but yeah, his act wore thin in Cleveland when they weren't producing.
Well,
he got pushed out of there.
Somebody who somehow straddles the line on confidence without being a dick publicly is Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow now has, after publicly campaigning for this part was interesting to me because I think we all know, watching Cincinnati play last year, that their offense was good enough to win the Super Bowl, but their defense was an atrocity. And now what they've done is they've made T. Higgins the second highest paid number 2 receiver and Jamar Chase the highest paid receiver. And if you're going to spend, and this was after Joe Burrow spent all of last season in press conferences politicking for them to sign T. Higgins, who he doesn't actually need. He does not need those 2 receivers. Now Trey Hendrickson has asked for a trade. They can't afford the one defensive player that they had. What do you do if you're the Cincinnati Bengals? Your quarterback wants something. Your quarterback says something publicly, but it's economically irresponsible to reward him because you saw what their team was by blueprint last year. And while it'd be nice for their offense to be good and for him to be happy, they clearly need monster money spent on the defense.
That was a nowhere franchise until Joe Burrow got there. They made it to a Super Bowl and they made it to an AFC Championship game. I don't really have many data points of Joe Burrow being elite when he's not surrounded by multiple world-class receivers. That's not a knock on Joe Burrow. I believe Joe Burrow to be great, but I also know what he had in college and what he's had in the pros, and anytime they're good, with the exception of last year, they have two really good receivers at least to help Joe Burrow take them there.
I mean, T. Higgins was hurt some last year.
And they didn't make the playoffs.
But they were good at offense all year. What I'm saying to you, just in the fiscal responsibility of the age, okay? This is what I'm asking you about the Bengals, laughing stock and blueprint. Their offensive and defensive lines need monster help after you just saw in the Super Bowl what happens when you have a great offensive and defensive line. If I give you any number 2 receiver, Joe Burrow and a healthy Jamar Chase are going to make a number 2 receiver be value. T. Higgins is great. That ain't value when you have to pay your number 2 more than anyone in the league and you're trying to win in the margins of money.
I don't disagree. If I'm paying a quarterback that much money, I'd like to think that, like Patrick Mahomes, we can afford to lose even a Tyreek Hill. Like, ideally, if I'm paying my quarterback that much money, I can afford to lose Jamar Chase. However, I'm the Cincinnati Bengals. I never spend money. I have a unicorn at quarterback that has done the impossible, seemingly, and has dragged my franchise from having a top pick. He went number 1, so a number 1 overall pick to a team that was perennially in the Super Bowl conversation. I trust a quarterback. What do you want here? What do you want us to do? We've addressed the defense by bringing in Al Golden. I don't think it's enough to overcome losing Hendrickson and Hubbard, but they're going to have to change their business model because of the quarterback contract that they gave. And he feels strongly enough that I need T. Higgins to be what you need me to be.
The question I need to ask you guys about this is, do you have to cave if you're the Bengals when your quarterback has gone public with putting pressure on your organization to bring back your number 2 so that your 2 receivers can be happy, when I don't believe that if Joe Burrow is what everyone tells me he is and what I believe him to be, that he would have any trouble making someone else a very good number 2, because that's what I'm paying him for. That's what I'm asking of him.
Joe Burrow could apply the pressure on guys like Hendrickson. Like, he could have. He chose not to.
No, he did it, but he did it with Higgins, and he did it saying, I'll restructure my own money to get him here. Like, he made his choice, and the organization didn't seem like it had a choice after that.
They don't.
But I'm saying they do. I'm saying they do.
Okay. It's weird. Last week you were like, Myles Garrett should hold this franchise hostage and have as much power as possible. And now you're going on the other way around it, like, screw you, Joe Burrow.
One of them is a loser that is still a loser and is only relevant because Myles Garrett is there. The other one is a different situation where they've been a loser, but you now have expectations for them because they have Joe Burrow.
Well, in good faith, I also think that you're calling for a power that historically just doesn't exist in the NFL. NFL players have never had this power that you were projecting onto Myles Garrett. It's just not the power dynamic of their contracts. They have very little leverage. They can't do what NBA teams are often faced with when it comes to star players doing that. But I defer to self-recognition that I'm a loser franchise, and I've always been one, except for when Joe Burrow is here. And what Joe Burrow tells me he needs, I'm going to get for Joe Burrow because that's usually worked out for us.
Okay, well, they did that with Aaron Rodgers, and now the story is that, and somebody help me with the reported details on this, because it went from Giants to Pittsburgh to now Minnesota, where the value of this position is such that they can actually end up calling some of the shots on your organization, whether it's against your organization's will or not. What's true and not true about Aaron Rodgers being interested in Minnesota, which he obviously would be, and Minnesota possibly being interested in Aaron Rodgers?
So a couple of days ago, it seemed like Adam Schefter was very flustered and putting it all on Aaron Rodgers. Just pick, are you going to play or not? It's a Giants or it's a Steelers, are you going to pick or not? And Rodgers waited it out, and the most recent reporting is his top choice is Minnesota. But it's kind of weird because it takes 2 to tango, and all the framing around the reporting of Aaron Rodgers and his decision, his preference being Minnesota, is if they want him to. So now it's another thing that we're waiting on to figure out when it comes to Aaron Rodgers. It seems as though it's been pretty much identified that Aaron Rodgers would like to play and play for the Minnesota Vikings. That is his top choice. Now he's kind of waiting for Minnesota to reciprocate.
Wouldn't that be anyone's top choice? If you see Sam Darnold resurrected there because of some of the best skill position players, the combination of them that you will see in the league, isn't that the choice isn't that the wisest choice for him?
No doubt. It's probably the smartest public move that he's made in quite some time. I think, and you're not overly threatened by the young quarterback because a young quarterback has to show that his body can even hold up. So, yeah, it's a great place for him. Absolutely, 100. I get it. I think he's doing the smart thing. I would be a little concerned as to, well, I'm just really going to do the Brett Favre thing?
Whole pass.
I'm just going to do the whole thing. And I'm going to play Green Bay. I'm going to play my replacement. I'm going to do that whole thing. Really, I'm okay.
It's the best spot for him, though. Like, what the choices are those three and only those three. Jessica, are you relieved to hear that you might not get stuck with him at quarterback in Pittsburgh?
It's a very unfortunate situation to be a Steelers fan right now because no matter what, like, you just got to accept they're not going to be. It's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. It's going to be bad.
Shador.
But would you rather have the headache of Aaron Rodgers and how annoying he is? I don't know. I mean, most likely not.
You know it's going to be bad. You know that's it. You just are portending doom.
Yes. Always. I mean, they'll still win 9 games, but.
Hey friends, it's Jer Bear here, and I'm here to tell you all about Boost Mobile, which is now a legit nationwide 5G network. So I must take a break from the jokes here for a second and put on my serious voice, because I would never, ever joke about a 5G network that has invested billions building 5G towers across the country. Not even once. Not even if Mr. Boost Mobile himself asked me to. There is nothing funny about it. Boost Mobile is now a legit nationwide 5G network and also provides coverage across 99% of America. Seriously. Visit boostmobile.com or your nearest Boost Mobile store location to learn more. The Boost Mobile network, together with our roaming partners, covers 99% of the U.S. population. 5G speeds, not available in all areas.
All right, I know I got to do this ad read, but hold on. Let me reapply. Did you hear that? Yep, that's my new favorite lip gloss from NYX Cosmetics. Now I'm ready to talk to you. I've been a huge fan of NYX Cosmetics for many years now. In fact, I use their Thick It, Stick It brow gel every single day. So you can imagine my excitement when we recently received a special delivery to the Batard studios from our friends over at NYX Cosmetics. And there it was. When I opened the box, glowing, I heard the angels sing, "Ah." It's their latest lip gloss fat oil lip trip. It's NYX Cosmetics' first lip oil of its kind. This creamy lip oil will have your lips dripping with fat perks. You get all the shine of a lip gloss and none of the stickiness while experiencing 12-hour hydration. I'm usually a matte lip gloss kind of gal. My normal go-to is NYX Cosmetics lip gloss, the Lingerie XXL. But after applying the status update shade, I have found my new go-to lip gloss. Fat Oil Lip Drip has high shine finish with comfortable wear and none of the sticky texture. A lip product that's hydrating, non-sticky, and only $9? Now that's a win. Try Fat Oil Lip Drip from NYX Professional Makeup. Available in 14 universally flattering shades. Find your perfect Fat Oil Lip Drip. Shop now at nyxcosmetics.com or a retailer near you.